back with Markets at Noon and a very interesting conversation lined up for you. Let's get into a conversation with Mr. Saharsh Damani, the CEO at FARA, joining us on the show. Mr. Damani, good afternoon. Thanks for your time. I'm just trying to understand everything about the CAFE3 norms. How big an impact do you see of this on OEMs? Who stands to benefit over here?
Yeah, so on the CAFE norms, there was quite a flip-flop which was happening, and ultimately the PMO stepped into it. See, CAFE 3 is essentially a wake-up call for the entire passenger vehicle industry. From April 27, as you know, every manufacturer has to meet significantly tighter fleet-wide fuel efficiency targets. And the norms have indeed seen some evolution on this. The latest draft has actually eased the curve slightly, and particularly for smaller and light passenger vehicles, which has brought in some relief to manufacturers with a strong small car portfolio. But let me be very clear, eased or not, the direction is, unmistakably towards cleaner, more efficient vehicles. Incremental tweaks to existing engines will simply not be, enough anymore. And the manufacturers who have already invested ahead of the curve in hybrids, in EVs, in advanced powertrains are naturally better positioned, to comply without taking a big hit. What also works in favor of EV heavy manufacturers is the super credit mechanism, built into the CAFE norms, and where an electric vehicle counts more favorably towards a manufacturer's fleet average. So in a sense, every EV sold helps offset the ICE vehicles in the portfolio, and that's a very powerful built-in incentive.
And Mr. Damani, any impact that you foresee on prices as a result of this? And are OEMs likely to pass on the full cost or absorb some of it, which will ultimately have an impact on margins of these companies?
So speaking on the pricing front, it's a very dynamic market that ways, and there's still some time, for this to get announced. But to some extent, I think yes, cleaner technology does cost money. Better engines, lighter materials, hybrid systems, and advanced aerodynamics. And none of this, comes free of cost. And those investments that OEMs have already made are making right now, do need to be recovered somewhere. But will OEMs pass on the full cost to the consumer? I don't think so. And the reason being, the market simply won't allow it as it is. We are a very price sensitive country. The mass segment buyer, where he's buying a small car or an entry level two-wheeler, has a very defined budget. And if you push the price too hard, you lose the sale, and it's that simple. So what typically happens, and we have seen this pattern play out with every regulatory transition, whether it was BS4 to BS6 or CAFE 1 to CAFE 2, manufacturers absorb a portion and pass on the portion and try to recover the rest through scaled efficiencies and localization.
Okay, understood. Mr. Damani also talked to us without getting into any specifics. Our policy pushes towards electrification. Are they starting to influence dealer inventory mix or customer inquiries in any way? Is that something that you're seeing playing on ground?
So yes, EV is getting a lot of buzz these days, and I think you have touched upon something that we at FADA also track very closely through our dealer network across the country. See, policy doesn't just change what's on road; it changes what's on the showroom floor and what the customer is asking about at the front desk. And that shift is clearly visible today. Our dealer pulse survey, which we do every month, is showing that nearly around 55 to 58% of the dealers on the ground are reporting accelerating inquiries for alternative fuels. And this includes both EV, CNG. And that's a significant number. And this tells you that the conversion, or the conversation at the showroom has fundamentally now changed. Now is the inventory mix changing or not? I think yes, it is changing gradually, but and yes, happening definitely also. dealers are now stocking a more diversified powertrain mix than they were doing 12 months ago. And the days of showroom being purely ICE is now behind us. But here's where I'd like to also add a word of balance. And the policy push is necessary and welcome, but India's transition will not be and should not only be one fuel story.
Clearly. And Mr. Damani, you just said that EVs work beautifully in urban areas. So will FADA support if other states also take up the Delhi approach, or you would want to have more fuel techs in the basket? What will your stance be when it comes to adoption across other states?
At FADA, we are not only pushing for one powertrain, but we want cleaner fuel to take up the space. And if you see at the end of this FY, 36% of the vehicles in the passenger vehicle categories which have been sold were in the green fuel category, with ICE taking the lead, followed by hybrid and then electric vehicles. So we, as the dealers body, we are pushing for greener fuel, and it may be in terms of whether CNG, EV, or hybrid. For us, every powertrain is equal in front of our eyes. And but if these powertrains fall in the greener fuel category or the cleaner fuel category, we are pushing for that across all the states.
Understood. And lastly, Mr. Damani, how is the on-ground demand situation looking like right now amidst a price hike, everything that's happening in West Asia and fuel price hike uncertainty? How is that playing out on ground?
Yeah, so if you see, we ended FY on an extremely high note, and the March figures were extremely, positive. All categories, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, passenger vehicle, commercial vehicles, registered all-time high numbers. Never seen such numbers across categories. Uh, so post March, when we enter April or May, they are generally softer months, and that's the trend. It is not only for this time, but generally post March, some softness kicks in because most of the purchases and high-end purchases or extremely frequent purchases end by March. So overall, April or May month generally seems to be a bit softer. Also, coming from this current Middle East crisis, customers are somewhere becoming taking a cautionary approach right now, but it is too early to predict whether they have absolutely stopped buying vehicles. That is not the case right now. So we'll have to take a call on a daily basis depending on how the situation in the Middle East plans out. And if things continue to go the way they are, then yes, there will be some slowdown coming into the market. But if this gets solved easily maybe in a week, 10 days time, then I don't think there'll be a big impact in terms of the customers not coming into the showroom and making their bookings. So as I said, it's an extremely dynamic situation, which we are keeping an eye on, and the situation is changing on a daily basis.
Okay, so that's the view coming in on the entire EV trade. But Mr. Damani, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us here on ET Now and helping us understand the entire what's going on really with the auto sector. But that's all the time we have on this edition of the show. Thanks so much for tuning in. All About Your Company will come up next.